in the U.S., there are 11 Black professional counselors, mental health providers. There's only 11%. I don't know if I said that part. 11% in the United States, counselors are Black. So that's nobody. And then naturally in Minnesota, it's 2.8%. So that's even less.
Back again with another episode, man, on Perfecting Progression. I'm your host, Dior Johnson. I'm really excited to have this next guest on. We're 5 episodes in, and on this episode will be Therapy and Wellness with Rachel Lindquist. And, I'm going to pass the mic on over to her for her to make her introduction, and then we can kind of get things going.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Rachel or Ray. I'm a licensed psychotherapist here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I own a private practice called A New Energy Therapy and Wellness, and I talk about all things mental health and wellness, mind-body connection, and everything that comes with that.
Good deal. Well, Rachel, thank you again for being on the podcast and the platform. I think this is definitely going to be an exciting episode, but also a episode for people to kind of gain knowledge and resonate with, and kind of talk more about how important mental health is, specifically in the spaces of where people might not feel what do I want to say? Where they might not feel strong, or they might feel specifically weakened, and they want to make sure that they have people or resources to kind of reach out to specifically. So again, thank you for that. And I guess where I can kind of start off, I know this is our first time meeting in person, so kind of, give the audience a little bit. I know we kind of, I know you kind of talked a little bit about your business a little bit, but kind of let's start from the beginning. I know you're a Minnesota native. Kind of like walk us through a little bit of your childhood upbringing and things of that nature.
Yeah. So born in Georgia, born in Savannah.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah. Was adopted very early on, moved up to Minnesota. Youngest of 4, the only adoptee, and grew up in a prominently white area, a suburb of Minneapolis called Blaine.
Yep.
And I mean, loved childhood, really was immersed in a bunch of activities, and really had a pretty solid, stable life. But naturally, like, there was a ton of microaggressions being in a prominently white area. And just like navigating what that was like for my girls who looked like myself, and just being in high school and being in that environment. So childhood was smooth, and then high school wasn't as smooth. So yeah.
And I'm glad that you kind of like broke that down a little bit. I mean, kind of going into as we talk about childhood upbringing, I think that is a big part of character development, especially with kind of the environment that you grew up in. So with you being born in Georgia, and then coming up to Minnesota, and as you talked about, Minnesota somewhat, or the area that you were in was predominantly white, kind of like walk me through how that character development kind of played pros and cons, I guess.
Sure.
Let's walk through that, because of course, being in that type of setting, there's definitely going to be pros as far as like things on how you can build as a individual person, but there's definitely some cons, especially when it comes to people that look like us. So kind of walk us through that, a little bit.
Yes. So they're naturally in that environment because more often than not, white communities are more developed. They have resources, they have access, they have money. Versus many Black communities that are still experiencing marginalized issues or whatever. So yes, there's a lot of opportunity in those environments. So being immersed in extracurriculars, being into athletics, having the ability to travel and do all of these things to really develop and grow and learn was a huge advantage. Both of my parents are in the medical field, so having those conversations at home just about learning and how important it is to read and to write and to have conversations with adults, like learning all of those foundational skills was super helpful. And then that trickles into the schools, and having that same type of energy or type of support, if you will. But then yes, being one of few
Yep.
who don't look like the majority,
Yep.
there was a ton of pressure.
Yep.
There were a ton of microaggressions, right? Yep. Where it's just like, oh, I assumed that you weren't capable of doing that, so I didn't even consider you for this opportunity.
Yep.
Or just, well, you affiliate with this group, so we're already going to make sure that you don't get to do X, Y, Z. Whatever the case may be, that was a collective experience for a lot of kids of color that I was friends with and who were my peers.
Yep.
And that can be really, that just wears on us, right? Like, and eventually, or a lot of times, many of us will start to feel defeated and start to self-doubt or not even reach our potential because it's like, well, what's the point? So there's a lot of discouragement that I started feeling like maybe like 13, 14.
Okay. Yep.
And yeah.
And that's where I was gonna. I mean, we're gonna get to that because I know we talked about it a little bit, over our call about the transition going into college. But if we talk about, some of those roadblocks, some of those rude awakenings, you kind of felt that more so, at a younger age before getting to college. So you were already kind of dealing with some pressures before, adulting or before getting to that stage of not being around your parents 24/7.
Right.
So, before we get to that point, if we stick more so to the pros of like, how well it developed you and your character specifically and your environment, how that developed you, how well did it kind of transform or mold your mind around your aspirations of things that you want to do or go after as far as like sports or as far as like, again, like you said, both of your parents were in the medical field.
Yeah.
So like, I know you've probably had one that's awesome because I feel like a lot of kids at that age, they either don't have a strong 2-parent household or they just don't have a clear focus or vision of exactly what they want to do as far as a profession. So you having that kind of talk towards like, how did it help mold your mind as far as saying like things that you want to do and things that kind of gave you drive?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, speaking to my parents, they are very, very supportive and very much just like, hey, kids, whatever you want to do, we'll walk you through that. Like, we'll take you to those things. We'll attend and support you in that way. So, like, one of my brothers was really big into acting. Another brother was big into soccer. He and I played soccer. And I realized pretty early on how fast I was. So track became my first love. And yeah, like just being able to have folks who could take me to practice, people who like would take me to track camps or it was called Velocity. I don't know if it still exists, but it was a like athletic club.
I was about to say, was it like AAU?
Yeah. No, it wasn't AAU. It was more so just like personal one-on-one training.
Okay, yep.
So a soccer teammate and I did that together, and obviously I focused on track. She was a soccer player, eventually played D2 soccer. She focused on soccer, whatever. Parents were able to afford that. Parents were able to like recognize the benefit of starting early and advancing as an athlete. So that was really cool that I like, it was never a question. If I needed new spikes, I would get those. If I had questions about like needing to stay after practice or wanting to connect with athletes who are already doing what I was doing, my parents were super on board to connect me to those people. And so were my coaches, and everyone was just, it was a good environment for athletics. So yeah, that was definitely a positive. And in terms of just like having really driven parents, like I witnessed my mom go to grad school for nursing, and she did that with 4 kids. All of us were young and loud and busy, and just like having that modeled after me was definitely a seed planter. I often say that, like what was the catalyst for where we are today? And my mom for sure is that.
And you said a lot of things. I feel like just having that vision, or I guess having those figures in your life where you can kind of see things that can be attainable is really, really important. And it's also really, really important. I mean, we're eventually going to get to it, but seeing people who look like us that are in leadership positions or in positions we never even thought about That is like super important. So, and then also, so now I kind of want to go right into some of the, being exposed to new settings and being exposed to new routines. But again, you coming from Georgia and then coming from Georgia and then going to Minnesota, that was an exposure to a new setting. You had to kind of manage and understand, like, one, it's not, you're gonna be kind of, I guess, in a sense, you're going to feel secluded, but you're still going to find ways to kind of blend in and kind of get more advanced so you can kind of feel included, in these spaces specifically. So now that you are getting involved with track and you're going to be, because I think once you left high school, you end up going to...
First, I went to Eau Claire.
UW
Eau Claire.
Okay. And were you still running track at that time at Eau Claire? Okay, good deal.
Yeah, so high school... I kind of going back to what I said about like having those stereotypes or assumptions placed on you. Mm-hmm. I did not apply myself in school at all. I was just talking with my dad. He was like, we didn't even think you were going to go to college.
Really?
Yeah. I just didn't care. Mm-hmm. If you look at yearbooks and they have the senior awards or those joke, most likely the whatever, I got class clown. Yep. So I loved just kidding around. Yep. I skipped class. Yep. I only went to school for track. Yep.
And before you go, let's harp on that a little bit. Like, what made, because that's the mental aspect. Mm-hmm. What made you, like, your dad was saying that, like, we didn't think that you were going to excel or advance to, higher aptitudes, but like, what was your mental at that time to say, shoot, like, I really don't care. I'm just caring about track. Like, let's harp on that a little bit.
Yeah. I think at 15, 16, 17, you don't see the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. Not everybody, at least. Mm-hmm. And I will say, like, not having any goals. Mm-hmm. And I guess the mental behind that was just, I was very here and now. Like, what was right in front of me was all that mattered. Yep. So it was really, really tough to just be like, oh my gosh, I need to start planning for my future. Mm-hmm. And you know what? Like, me not doing well in math is actually going to affect my GPA. Mm-hmm. And that's what gets me into good schools. Mm-hmm. So I didn't see the bigger picture. Mm-hmm. And no one could really tell me anything.
Yep. And what was the switch that kind of got you to the point of like, okay, I need to kind of tighten up?
It's funny because I took some notes for what we were going to talk about too. Sure. And that was something that I wanted to bring up, was just this ongoing question of like, what am I doing? Mm-hmm. So I think the wake up call was all of my friends who were also skipping class, but like able to reel it in, maintain, and still get really great grades. Yep. They were, applying for scholarships, applying for schools, applying for really, really good schools, and being really successful in multiple realms. Yep. And so that was a wake up call for me for sure. Mm-hmm. And then all of my brothers, they all went to college too. So like, and again, my parents are highly successful. Like, that's what's expected of you. Mm-hmm. But I just didn't realize that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was the first wake up call, was like seeing the people around me start to have those conversations and be taken seriously. Yep. And I wasn't. Yep. And so recognizing, I don't know if it was my dad or a coach or maybe my counselor, but knowing like I had at the time was a part of like relays that had school records. I was close to beating a school record for track. Yep. We recognized like, hey, we could probably do something with this. Yep. And make sure that you get higher education. Yep. So that's how I got into school. For sure. Track was my gateway. For sure. To getting into university. For sure.
Yeah, and thank you for kind of like breaking that down, because I feel like it's right on brand of like why I like to have individuals on my platform and talk about specifically their progression of going through life. Mm-hmm. And when you kind of got that click of like, okay, like this is what I need to do, and this is kind of what I was leaning on specifically when we talk about the sports realm, now you're seeing yourself excel. And now you're kind of getting in that space of so essentially once you are getting into the space of going to college, now it's gonna come down to like managing pressures and managing perfectionism. So now that you know, like, okay, this is what needs to be done. I see my friends kind of, maintaining, and they're still kind of like doing the stuff that I was doing. But now I essentially know what needs to be done for me to kind of continue on the path that I see myself going. But now that you step into college, I know you said you went to UClair first before you transferred, but kind of walk me through, because I know we talked about it a little bit, but as you began to manage all of this stuff, this is kind of somewhat where some of that, the mental health kind of plays a factor, yes. Anxiety plays a factor, trauma from your past. So let's start like kind of going into that, space of how hard, I guess, was it to manage some of this pressure going into college?
Sure. I think it was a lot of like, I guess I would say that was where anxiety started to have a home in my mental.
Got to college.
Once I got to college, once I recognized like it's just you.
Yep.
And like you are responsible for your future.
Yep.
That was a lot of pressure. I started to get a lot more serious about myself.
Yep.
Which was a good thing, and not like it also was not a great thing because I took myself too seriously, where I still struggle with that today. So navigating that felt really lonely and isolating, and I think like transitions that happens for folks where it's just like the only person who knows how it feels for you is you. And the only person who knows where you came from in a sea of new people is you. Like there's not really the support system that you are used to having. You have to develop and form your own. So that's, I think, was very eye-opening for me and became like a really identity thing. And again, like that ongoing question of like, what am I doing? Why am I here? So that started there, and then transferred to Mankato. Loved Mankato. I'm still friends with a ton of
Was UClair just not the school for you?
No. It was like Wisconsin was super uncomfortable. Just again, a prominently white area. And I didn't like the school. It's a very good school. They have a ton of good programs, but for me, it was not the setting. So transferred after freshman year, like got in, got out, and then loved Mankato again. I connected with a lot of kids from high school. It just felt like Minneapolis, but a little bit
further out.
Away from town. So that was a good transition for me, and I really did well for a moment there. And then I had a random like freak accident at the U at a track meet. I was warming up for a race. A water bottle, like a plastic water bottle, was on the track. And so I was running as fast as I could out of the blocks for a warm up, slipped on a water bottle, tore my ACL, partial tore my meniscus, and sprained my MCL. And that was just like, that felt like my life was over. I was a junior, and track just never was the same after that, like at all. Recovery was super depressing. I quit therapy like multiple times, and my dad's a physical therapist, so I knew like this is not what my body needs right now. But so that like threw me into this whole existential theme of what am I doing? Why is this happening to me? So I think those experiences really, again, created a home for anxiety and sadness. And something that I had to really work through and navigate well into my 20s. And with that, like when you are at your lowest, you start to question everything. And you start to just like replay. We call it in therapy, we call it ruminating. You start to just overanalyze, replay really negative things that have happened to you, things that are no longer within your control, but yet here you are still thinking about it. So that was like very much what I was on. So kind of talking a little bit about
No, that was great.
Depression.
That was great. And I even asked you too. I'm just curious, what events did you run?
Yeah, I was a short sprinter. So
okay,
short
60.
sprints, 60 indoor. Yep. That was I was good at that one.
Yep.
Sometimes a 200 indoor, and then outdoor 4x1, open 100.
Yep. Well, I mean, I kind of, at the end of the day, I do hate that happened and that you went through that, traumatic experience with that injury and with that accident. But, like, again, I feel like I can resonate, not specifically from the injury, but just knowing that when something might feel like it's over, or something might feel like, definitely something, it's a massive change after a certain event, and you have to figure out how you need to kind of go about it from that point on, is definitely it's a mind shift. Yes. It's a mind shift. And again, I think it kind of touches on, the mental state of, how mentally strong you are. There are some people that are mentally strong, and there are some people that are not as mentally strong, that need those, what you talked about in today's conversation. The support system, the environment is important. And if you don't know, or if you don't have those resources, then it is important to understand where you can go and find these resources to make sure that you are the healthiest person that you can be. And one thing that you also talked about was, when traumatic, I think you said, like, when you're at your lowest point, or when you go through traumatic experiences, you kind of like replay it, or you like question, like, why is this happening to me? I can definitely resonate with that 100%. And it's just like, sometimes you don't have control of certain things that happen, but at the same time, it's just like, you have to figure out how to person I am. You have to, I mean, it is what it is, but as we know, life goes on, but you have to figure out how to take that next step forward, how to be, again, the best person that you can be. So, as we go into, more so of the next phase of what I kind of want to talk about, which is corrective action. Like, how do you, what are those corrective action, pieces that you're putting in place to essentially to correct some of the things that have happened that you didn't have control over. So part of it you talked about was like you talked about it a little bit earlier, but like self-identity through life transitions. It's like an awareness that you had, like you're kind of questioning yourself as you're going through these transitions of, like, one, it could be your purpose. It could be your purpose of like, what am I truly doing? I know I heard you talk about that a little bit, but what am I truly doing? Whether it's through, whether it's through sports or whether it's through anything that you're doing. But I feel like that self-identity going, especially being compared to sports, I feel like a lot of athletes, go through somewhat of a self-identity, especially when they're getting, disassociated from their sport that they were a part of majority of their life, or that they made, or that they, how do I want to say it? That it was just like their first love. Yeah. They're getting away from their first love. Now it's just like, okay, who exactly, am I outside of this love? So, like, kind of walk me through a little bit of, I guess I can ask you more so about somewhat of like the support systems. I want to talk about, I guess, more so like self-identity through those transitions. Like, how important is it when you're going through those transitions? I guess, like, some people are not aware of that when they're going through that until it's over with. Right. So I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about somewhat of the self-identity, and then how important, the support systems, and then self-care is. Yeah. I know that was like loaded. Yeah. No, I'm following. I apologize. To start with, I think it could be like a life-changing situation or a milestone coming to an end, whatever it is, like an event can happen. Mm-hmm. It can also be your interests change, you change. Yeah. It could be your setting or environment changes. You have a different job that requires more of you. Yep. Or a different version of you. Whatever it is, transitions. Yes, that's a moment for us to reflect on who we are. Yep. And where we're headed. Yep. So I often recommend folks, just with that being said, to take pause. Mm-hmm. And I think
checking in with yourself. And if it's like, if it's you need to check in with yourself to give yourself flowers, if you need to check in with yourself to hold yourself more accountable, you have to start having conversations with one. And that pause, that opportunity to reflect or to plan is very, I would say that's the fun part. Like you kind of get to do research and dream and visualize about where you're headed. So really honing in on what's next for you and not so much on what just ended. And that's easier said than done. But again, when we take pause, we can kind of collect ourselves and we can collect our thoughts and make more organized or like reasonable decisions. The other thing with transitions is like you said, support system. I think part of it is if you're able, if there's somebody who's known you for a while and who has been either a guide, a mentor, or just a good friend, checking in with them and asking like, hey, what are you noticing in me? Like I just ended this college career in football and I'm curious, like, what's your perspective on that experience from your lens?
And that's and I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's what I wanted you to talk about. Like in high school, you would say your support system primarily was your parents. But, of course, going through college, you're still going to say it's your parents. But, outside of your parents, like who else would be your support system? You almost would say, like, I felt, like you said, you felt alone. Like, who are those people that you should reach out to? Because sometimes the friends might not be the best,
Right. No, absolutely.
So that's kind of where I forgot to talk about. But
yeah, I think, again, like if it's a guide or mentor, so who is someone who's already doing what you want to be doing? Who is somebody who is, their job is to be a cheerleader? If that's a therapist, if that's a coach, if that is an academic advisor, there is a level of putting yourself out there and initiating these connections. But the support is there. And I think we get lost in thinking that it's just us against the world. That is not the case. Again, the support is there. That's literally my job, is to rally behind folks and uplift them. So being intentional about those types of connections is really important. Even if it feels forced, even if it's like awkward or uncomfortable for you to be that form of vulnerable, it's important. So that would be an example. Coaches, again, teachers or professors, it could be a family member, but oftentimes somebody who emulates characteristics or has a job or a role that you could see yourself doing.
Thank you for talking about that.
Yeah.
Thank you for talking about it. I think that is a major highlighted space sometimes where people can kind of see things as blurry and not know exactly who to reach out to. When going through any situation in life, especially if they don't have people to look up to, look up to. So it can be, like you said, it's easier said than done. And another thing that you said too, that I feel like I highly resonate with, and I feel like a lot of people should kind of be listening to this part, is that a lot of people don't like anybody. I feel like a lot of people don't like feeling vulnerable. But that is a space for you to grow, for you to understand that, all of us, we all have strengths, but for you to truly grow, you need to identify where you're weak at, where you're vulnerable at, and make those your strengths, So I'm glad that you talked about that. And then also, with you, so that's one thing that we were going to lead into, but let's talk a little bit about, taking full advantage of opportunity. So now that you were able to kind of evaluate some of the things that you were going through personally, going through your transitions, going through college, kind of having a somewhat of a mind shift after, your injury through track. Now you're kind of understanding like this is somewhat of a space where one, I want to better myself, but I also want to help other people that might be going through these similar situations or might need somebody to kind of reach out to, or like you said, help uplift them.
Right.
So kind of walk me through taking full advantage of your opportunity during this time. And then also kind of talk about pretty much like, what did it take for you to kind of go through this leadership development space and time? Because at the end of the day, like you talked about it a little bit, but the fun part, you talked about it a little bit, like research. Like a lot of stuff that you're doing right now, you're a very educated person, but you definitely got to do some research behind it before you start to, professionally speak to other people in this type of space. So kind of walk me through a little bit of your leadership development or your development period of getting to kind of where you're at right now. And then also, how important is it of capitalizing on areas that require attention and focus, like what we're talking about now?
Yeah. So I like the class clown vibe that remained true throughout my early 20s.
Yep.
And I think it was like one of my mid-20 birthdays, like 23, 4, or 5, one of those. My mom was just like, girl, you need, like, what are you doing?
Yep.
I was like I was still navigating the career realm like I did. I was a manager at a Finish Line for maybe a year or two, like just like jobs, not careers. And
figuring it out.
Figuring it out as any 20-something should be doing. Explore and don't rush it, whatever. So one of those birthdays, she was like, you would be good at this. Like I could see you doing law. I could see you, if you want to follow my footsteps, although we all knew I hate blood. So like nursing was not going to be where I would head. But she was like, consider counseling or teaching. Like, what are you going to do to extend self to others? So that's when the wheels started turning. And again, that question of like, what am I doing here? I got to start taking myself seriously. And I'll just say, like, it's never too late to have that internal dialogue. You can always pivot no matter how old you are. I work with people who are 40, 50 and having those questions.
Talk about it.
Yes, it is okay to ask yourself, is this really what I want to be doing? But yeah, so that's how I landed into counseling. I've always loved youth, always been great with kids and just seeing myself in them, obviously, like, kids who have not the best background or parents don't have their best interests at heart. Being an adoptee, that really resonates for me because my origin story was not ideal. So that's like what I initially wanted to do, was start working with adolescents. And then I applied to grad school, went to the same grad school my mom went to and like the same campus. And we just always have that connection because I tend to follow her footsteps still in learning and work and everything like that. So that's what started that transition. And the development piece, again, like when you have these moments of something new where, yes, you are going to feel super vulnerable, super exposed, it is important to, I say that I categorize structure and routine as self-care because you are allowing your body peace and safety, a sense of peace and safety when it knows what to expect. So that's where where I start to encourage habit change for folks. When they're at like ground zero and this is a completely new space for them, I'm like, you need to have a routine. Stick to something that you know, that you do every day.
That attention and focus piece.
So then just kind of developing some habit changes for myself. And part of that trickles into my friend group. My friend group significantly changed in my mid-20s. And that's like a standard, I think, almost a rite of passage for folks in their 20s is like, as you change, as your brain changes, as you grow, as you develop, your team isn't always going to look the same.
Your environment is going to change.
Your interests are going to change, and that's not good or bad. It's just, it is. So just several little changes all kind of at once, but gradual. And my attitude towards school completely shifted. Once I got accepted into grad school at St. Mary's, I was like, wow, like I made it kind of. Like I can actually do whatever I want. Like it was very empowering for me. And so I started to, take myself more seriously.
And again, I mean, I think you're dropping a lot of jewels, and I definitely appreciate you talking about it. But I definitely want to give you your flowers, and say, like, as we know, a lot of things can be hard, in this life that we live. But being able to understand when you're at the bottom, or when you're hitting ground zero, when you're going through these transitions, and being able to, like you said, really lock in and pay attention and focus on the things that are going to help you get to what you said before earlier in the conversation. You were so much of a now person, but sometimes you can't just think about, like, the now is important. You must take care of today.
Yeah.
But you must take care of today so that you can, like, excel and grow
tomorrow. Yeah.
and have a better tomorrow.
Yep.
Right. So and I agree with you on that. So I definitely wanted to give you your flowers to just, say, like, for the stuff that you were doing before, it's gotten you to the point now. Like, things don't happen overnight, but you must put in the corrective action. You must put in the correct deposits, not specifically, physically in the bank, but like stuff that's going to help you personally and individually, for you to make an impact.
Yeah.
In your life and for others around you. So that was big. And now we're transitioning into your practice. And I feel like, I was kind of writing my notes as well. Yeah. So that's how you say it, right? A new energy, therapy and wellness. And then the first thing that when I was like saying it back to myself, I'm like, that's actually like to me, it's a creative name, because I was going to have you talk about it, but like, I was going to ask you about the name creativity. Because when I think about energy, or when I think about, people having like good energy or new energy around you, like that's important. So I didn't know if it was like you specifically talking about the word new, and then you kind of like connected in it with the word energy, new energy. So I was going to have you talk a little bit about it.
More or less, that's what it is. My favorite word is anew, and that just means positive change, a fresh start.
Okay.
So I love saying, let's start anew, start fresh, let's do it over and do it better.
Yep.
And then energy, yes. So your inner energy, yourself.
Yep.
And my dad came up with that part.
Okay.
So he'll say healing energy from within.
Yep.
So that is where that name comes from.
Good deal. So let's talk a little bit about your target. I mean, this whole time of the conversation, I mean, some of the stuff was self-explanatory, but I want you to be more intentional around, like, who is the target audience? Yes. Who do you want your clients to be? Who are we specifically targeting?
Yeah.
Let's get more, detailed in that.
So naturally, Black people. So in the U.S., there are 11 Black professional counselors, mental health providers. There's only 11%. I don't know if I said that part. 11% in the United States, counselors are Black. So that's nobody. And then naturally in Minnesota, it's 2.8%. So that's even less.
Right.
So that is like why I do what I do. And with that, I've extended it naturally to like people of color in general. So our Black and brown brothers and sisters. And because I didn't really talk about it, but I struggled with anxiety a lot.
Yep.
Mid-20s to I'm in my early 30s now, but that has been an ongoing constant for me. And I've recognized that in so many Black and brown professionals, right? Like there's constant pressure whatever space we enter, we're always over-explaining ourselves or like what we do or whatever. Like we have to advocate for ourselves all the time.
Yep.
And so I have started to work, or I used to work with teens. I did school-based therapy, loved it. It was so fun and so energizing. But then as I transitioned to private practice, I work with adults, primarily BIPOC professionals. So I have a couple of attorneys that I work with. I have a couple of health directors. These are really successful individuals who struggle with perfectionism, struggle with like the appearing like they have it all together, and how much stress and trauma is attached to that pressure.
Talk about that. I remember we talked about that over the call, and I'm like, that'd be a great like segue. Yeah. Like, yes, I wanted you to talk about that.
Yeah. So really being able to successfully navigate these spaces doesn't mean like, oh, I got the promotion, I'm making well over 6 figures, whatever. Yes, those are amazing things, but true success is being able to be yourself in those environments. And so we really unpack like the trauma, right, that has brought us to where we're at in life. I mean, as Black and brown folks, we all have collective trauma, generational trauma, and just existing every day. There is trauma attached to that, whether we recognize that's what's happening or not. So unpacking those things, unpacking childhood stuff, recognizing attachment styles. So recognizing why we're super independent or why we're codependent, and really, really obsessed with connection to a negative degree or whatever it is. So all of these little elements that contribute to our being and the struggles that are attached to that. That's what we talk about in therapy with me.
Good deal. And then also I was going to ask you about some of the, and forgive me if you touched on it, but the offered services within your practice, like how does that look? Specifically, if somebody wants to come and work with Rachel, how does that look?
So if someone wants to come and work with me, I always say it, like, as much as I am offering this service for you, I want to make sure that it's a good fit. So I'm very selective with people who I bring on in my practice, not because it has nothing to do with me, but I want to make sure that I can meet you where you're at in the best way possible. So being an aligned fit is super important to me. With that said, I often do consultation calls where it's like, tell me what's up. Let me tell you how I practice. And let's see if that's a good match. Oftentimes it is, which is good. But that's like, that vetting call is super big. And yeah, people can reach me on social media, on my website, anewenergy.com, to initiate that process. So I do individual counseling, and then we will be adding personal coaching as well for folks who maybe don't need to do the reflecting anymore or find meaning for what has happened to them or what they've gone through. And now they're more so goal-oriented and ready to tackle some things and have an accountability person and somebody who's rallying and supporting them in their goals. So that's something that we'll be adding soon.
Is that like more so like a next step, like a progression piece? Like, no?
Just a separate service.
Okay.
So, and it's not interchangeable either. So it's like, if you are receiving counseling from me, that is a clinical situation. I'm giving you a diagnosis, a mental health disorder diagnosis. We're creating a treatment plan. We are connecting with your care team. Like, that's really big for me too. I talk about like that therapy and wellness. That wellness piece is all about the holistic, the mind, the body, the spiritual and emotional connection, and health. So oftentimes I'm more than happy to sit on the phone with someone's primary care physician and make sure that we are connected on what this person needs, especially for BIPOC people, because healthcare hates us. So that's like very clinical, very much like, a whole separate situation than personal coaching. That is a lot more casual. I think it's a good introduction to mental health, right? Because I am a mental health clinician. So a lot of my speak is therapy language, and it's totally necessary sometimes. But this is where we get more into the development. And if you are in the mindset to like make changes instead of process what's happened or process what you're going through, that's what coaching is for. Coaching is like, hey, I want to do this, so I need somebody to set me up to do that.
And I also feel that, I definitely feel like it'll be positive traction that'll come from this episode, just because of, just with the space that I've been in, I guess just playing football, a lot of us kind of question mental health.
Yes.
Like, I don't want to say question, like we know it possibly is there, I guess, like, after we've been done with playing a certain sport or whatever we're going through in life, not just getting done playing football, but I know sometimes as men, as a whole, not just athletes, but we have struggles with just feeling like we have a I don't know, we just have somewhat of a mental weakness, or we feel like we just can't reach out to somebody outside of, I don't know, outside the family or outside of your friend group. If anything, is something that we're holding internally, and we're that's just never leaving us. So I feel like just kind of having you on this platform, I definitely feel like it's gonna open up to the correct. It's gonna open up to many different ears, but it's gonna definitely open up to an audience that might be just like closed, like So
absolutely,
I definitely feel like that's gonna be big.
And I mean, that's just the thing with mental health in the Black community or the people of color community. There's a stigma against healthcare in general. Why would we trust it? It's failed us multiple times. It continues to fail us. The healthcare system is not set up for us to heal. So there's already that barrier. And then, yes, in our community, to be vulnerable is weak. When there's strength in vulnerability. There is truly to be able to admit that we're navigating something that's really tough is important, and that's super big. But it's hard to get there. So I mean, if anything, I hope that this just plants some seeds for folks. For sure. And recognize that there are people who look like them who can walk them through that journey. And that it's not something we want to internalize, because then, as we see generational trauma, that is real, that is scientifically proven. It's in our DNA. When we hold things in, it passes on. So to be able to actually go to therapy, to be able to communicate what you're needing or that you're struggling, you are breaking a generational curse.
Correct. And also one thing before I go to the last thing I'm gonna talk about, I do know, like, just as a man, I feel like it's somewhat of like a badge of honor. Like when you're going through some type of trauma, or if you're going through specific situations in life, like sometimes you may feel like, like there's not a corrective action towards a healing process, of reaching out to, a professional like yourself or external resources, but also just knowing, like, I just got me, myself, and we gonna get through it. And then if a person does get through it, it's more so like, I didn't beat a lot of obstacles. I don't need that. It's a lot of people that can come from that perspective, but there's certain things that can happen in life where it's like, I probably should have, had these type of conversations earlier on, with a professional. So that's just like another lens that I feel like I should throw in there. But I know we talked a little bit about grounding techniques and how people can kind of benefit from that. I know we talked about possibly doing one while we're on a podcast, but I guess I wanted you to talk a little bit about, like, what exactly are grounding techniques and how do people benefit from it?
Yeah. So grounding techniques are a way to regulate your nervous system. And so we know that when our nervous system, it's like there's several parts to it. But the part that is activated by stress is called our autonomic nervous system. And that gets activated anytime we think that we are in danger. So, and that doesn't mean like literally someone's after me trying to harm me, but that could be like someone's accusing me of my character. Now I'm on defense mode. Or I got caught doing something. Now I'm on defense mode, or I'm fleeing from that situation. So I'm kind of alluding to what we call trauma responses. A lot of people have heard of like the flight trauma response. There's a couple of more, but all that to say, that is our initial response. So if someone accuses me of doing something I didn't do, my trauma response is to fight and to yell and be like, no, I didn't do that. Like, what are you talking about? And when we have these responses, our body completely goes into that mode. And so grounding is a form of therapy, or what we call like somatic therapy or techniques to regulate yourself physically so that it disrupts the negative stuff going on in your mind. So I always say, as above, so below, meaning whatever I'm thinking about, whatever I'm like really focused on, my body is going to mirror that. So if I'm really, really nervous, my heart rate is going to go up. I'm going to be really tense. I might start to sweat. So recognizing that everything is connected, if I can hone in and relax this piece of my body, my brain will follow, or vice versa. So grounding techniques are helpful when we are super anxious in a setting, when we recognize like I need to chill. If we're overthinking, it's a way to disrupt unhelpful thoughts. And it can just be helpful in general. Like if you're just like, I just need to ground. An easy one that we could just do would be the 5-4-3-2-1 method. And that's like the simplest one. You're tapping into your 5 senses. So I will ask you in this moment, what in the area that we're in, the space that we're in, can you tell me 5 things that you can see?
Just 5 things.
5 things that you can see in this room.
Yeah, I mean, the objects that are in this room, you just want me to name. So we have chairs. We have I can't think of the name for it, but the rollout that people use for
yoga mats.
Yep, we got yoga mats. I see a soccer ball. I see some hand sanitizer, and what else can I say? We got the video equipment that's right in front of us.
4 things, you don't have to, but that you could get up and physically touch.
I can touch. Yeah, I could touch my drink, my water bottle. I could touch. I could touch my toes. I could touch. I could touch the wall.
Perfect. That was 3.
Oh, I thought you said 4.
Oh, did I? Yeah, I did. 4 things you could touch.
And so, if I really wanted to, I probably could like reach up and touch the ceiling, maybe.
Okay. 3 things that you can hear.
I can hear. What was it that you said in the beginning before we started?
The sound machine.
The sound machine. So that might.
Your voice.
Yeah, I can hear my voice. Then your voice.
My voice. 2 things that you can smell.
I can smell the scent of individuals that are in the room, and what else could I say? That might be it. I feel like before everybody's sense, I could smell like the room itself. So that's 2 right there. Yeah.
I sprayed lavender in here. Maybe that was
it. Did? Okay. That's what I smelled in.
One thing you could taste. Coffee, toothpaste.
Just like a random taste anything.
Currently.
Or
the last thing you ate.
Yogurt.
Okay.
Yeah, and what was that called?
The 5-4-3-2-1.
5-4-3-2-1. Okay.
Did you focus on much else as you were trying to label multiple things in the area?
No, I was really just focused on
here and now.
Yeah, here and now. Yeah.
The easiest way to ground is tapping into our senses, because that's what carries us all throughout the day. And again, if we can just kind of disrupt whatever's going on in our head or things we can't control, that can be super, super helpful.
For sure. Well, that was, again, and I guess, and what the easiest one that we just did, for everybody to see was the 5, what again?
5-4-3-2-1.
5-4-3-2-1. And then what are some other ones that I guess that you do?
Yeah. So I definitely encourage like temperature, if that's something that people can ground with. So an ice cube or a hot liquid, a cold liquid, that's super easy. So when we are dysregulated, so angry, nervous, worried, I definitely encourage getting, like, you can splash cold water on your face or drinking something cold or hot, but that can soothe us physically as well and kind of calm us mentally as well. Breath work is huge. I'm super big on breath work. So an easy one would be belly breathing. So if you can just do 3 breaths where you're breathing in through your nose and sticking your tummy out And then as you exhale through your mouth, just relaxing your belly. So allowing your belly to expand as you breathe in, and then relax as you breathe out. And the last breathing technique that's simple to remember is the 4-7-8. So you breathe in through your nose for 4 seconds. You hold your breath for 7, and then you exhale for 8. And if you can just do that 3 times, that can be a centering technique as well.
Good deal. Well, thank you for kind of walking us through those grounding techniques and, how, many different individuals can kind of benefit from that. Thank you for being on the platform, talking about, your practice and your life transitions that have, gotten you to this point, and some of the things that, that you've learned throughout the way to be the professional that you are, so that was really important. And again, I'm gonna make sure that, people find, because I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have some people to refer over to you.
Yeah.
For sure after this episode. But
Beautiful.
Social media, a new energy?
Yep, a new energy on Instagram.
Yep. And then also your website. The website is on that page as well.
Yes, anewenergy.com.
Yep.
So individual counseling. I also do trauma-informed yoga for youth at schools.
Yep.
If there are people listening who are affiliated with schools or organizations for kiddos.
Yep.
And then I do presentations as well. So was just at the U of M a couple weeks ago. Was at Hamlin University and Dakota County and Inver Hills this month. So it's been busy with that population. But I'm all over the place.
Well, good. Well, keep up the great work. I can definitely say that you're making an impact, especially with that statistic that you gave within the state of Minnesota. So hopefully this episode can kind of, inspire somebody else that might be in this space that might be looking to kind of do the same thing that you're doing. So
I hope so.
So appreciate you. Make sure you guys tap in and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You definitely can follow the Perfected Progression page on Instagram, and then TikTok as well, finding some of the content that One Gold Media puts together for the platform. So thank you for being on the platform again, Rachel,
Thank you
and signing out.